Switching venues and like live, not live. What are we doing here? So hi everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Ella and I really appreciate it. I think I want to go back to, well, my name is Angela Arsenault, representative from Williston, serving on House Judiciary currently and co-chair of the Women's Caucus.
I'm Chapin. I serve on the Committee on Environment and co-chair with Angela. I'll just include you guys.
Yeah, Esther Charleston, Chair of the Vermont Commission on Women.
Carrie Brown, Executive Director of the Vermont Commission on Women.
Carol, you're
I'm Carol Odie, and I'm State Rep from Berlin.
So several months ago now, Ella and I were meeting with Isaac and Haley from DOC, and we got on the topic of, we're often focused on the new women's facility and everything involved with that, appropriations and all of this. But we were very interested in expanding the conversation and expanding the narrative to always be sure we're including everything that's happening while women are incarcerated, the services provided, what gaps there may be in services, both inside the current facility, a new facility, and in that transition to reentry, and also even backing up as much as possible within your your respective roles to before incarceration. And we really were interested in broadening the conversation about justice-involved women, how to support that population, as well as everyone who we know to be providing these vital services. So we started a conversation back then, and I know that we've heard from some of you before, so I don't mean to say that this is like brand new, but we want to keep the conversation going and expand it. And so we're just really grateful for all of you being here, talking about what you do, but also doing what you do. So do you want to?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add other than just, this time and location for Women's Caucus meetings has been challenging for members to get here. We are recording sessions so that we have this documented, and we are planning to sort of have at least distribute recordings of our Women's Caucus meetings, if not have like more of a landing site with the Commission on Women at some point for some of the videos. But I also just wanted to offer the two of you a chance to talk about how this topic relates to your work on the commission, if you'd like to, before we start.
Well, the commission has been working on advocating for incarcerated women for way longer than I've been associated with the commission, which is quite a long time, and working with the partners who are in this room, who you're all going to hear from. And recently we've been working on, as the new prison is being planned and that whole process is going, we've been working on trying to get input from the people who are most directly impacted. And Esther will talk more about it.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to go with a few commissioners, and we went and we heard and we listened, and it was beautiful to hear their voices. A lot of the feedback, I believe others have already heard, but they are excited for a new facility. Some of them are nervous about it, but we're here to support. And so us being that bridge to really get those voices heard is our work.
Thank you.
So do you have, I think you had an order proposed, right?
Sure, and it wasn't, I was going to start with the network just because I know that they do a lot of broad work to help all the service providers. So yeah.
Up to the
Yeah, we're just trying to join at the table. Yeah.
Well, I'll provide just a very, very brief intro, and then I'll hand it over to Kylan. So Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, we run a program called Divas inside CRCF that provides in-person advocacy and support to survivors who are incarcerated. And these providers, as you know, do really essential work and also do very challenging work. And so appreciate the opportunity to share more about it. They work very highly collaboratively, and our systems and folks at CRCF really benefit from that. And these providers are also a critical part of solution making and thinking about designing and building a new women's facility, reducing the state's reliance on incarceration, and providing more supports to prevent justice involvement, support reentry. I will hand around a data snapshot, a survey that folks in our Divas program conducted that highlights a bit about experiences of interpersonal trauma that folks at CRCF have experienced. And then Kylan, I'll turn it over to you to share more.
Yeah, please come.
Yeah.
You okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kylan. I'm the director of the Divas program. Divas stands for Discussing Intimate Violence and Accessing Support. I've been working in CRCF for a little over 7 years. Divas works with people who've experienced domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking. Those are really broad terms where we try to focus on a lot of different areas of relationships, trauma, mindfulness, grounding the experience of being incarcerated in the way that that can sometimes mirror some of the factors of trauma and interpersonal violence that people have experienced. You can see on that snapshot, this is a survey that we did in November of last year. And out of the 100 respondents, 97% of those people had an instance of domestic violence. I think it's 84% had an instance of sexual violence and over 60% had an instance of forced criminality. The forced criminality we asked in terms of the statute around trafficking. Some people were able to identify that it was more of an interpersonal violence situation. So we labeled that as forced criminality. But for the vast number of people, these experiences have been happening for their entire life. Most people had an instance of that at some point between the ages of 0 and 5, and then still within the past 5 years of taking this survey. So for people who are incarcerated and the people that we work with, it's safe to assume that everyone in CRCF has an instance of violence, and being able to treat them with humanity and kindness and understanding about that while they're incarcerated is really, really special. The kinds of services that we provide vary depending on what services people are looking for. All of our services are totally voluntary and confidential. Divas has the highest level of confidentiality at CRCF because we have victim crisis worker privilege. So a lot of people access us for those reasons, and as well as groups and like special activities that we do. But the confidentiality is something that's really unique to Divas specifically. Being able to come and use our space and talk about these really personal and traumatizing experiences without the fear that that information is going to get back to a probation officer, have any impact on their case, or any sort of like standing in the correctional facility is something really important. We also provide groups, educational groups on relationships, healthy relationships, mindfulness and grounding, and we also do yoga and book club and all kinds of things like that as well. We try to vary the programs as much as possible so everyone can have as many learning experiences as they'd like to, and not sort of the same repetitive education. And then as people are getting ready to exit the correctional facility, we get them connected with their local domestic violence program, the resources that they need. You'll hear from some other providers that we work with on reentry, but we each kind of have a little facet that we work with. Divas works to provide people with cell phones and minutes to keep up to date with appointments and any other sort of resourcing that they need, job applications, all that kind of stuff. And then some other elements of our program, we also do training with correction staff on working with people who have experienced trauma. We're part of the Safety Matters training schedule, so we work with corrections officers every month, providing that kind of support. We also provide confidential services to correction staff. If there's something that they're learning in a training and they're realizing that that's a cycle of violence happening in their own life, or they're looking for support for somebody else, we can provide confidential services to staff members as well. And then we also have a memorandum of understanding with the department around PREA, so the Prison Rape Elimination Act. If there's any sort of misconduct that happens in the facility between two incarcerated individuals or between a staff person and an incarcerated individual, any sort of investigation or reporting, we're there to support the survivor as well. Some other, sorry, my notes fell off my phone. Perfect, thank you. Some of the areas where I think we are seeing some gaps and where we'd like to continue to expand services is so LGBTQ specific. services and groups and being able to provide more targeted release planning and support for people while they're incarcerated. You can see on here that 26% of those individuals identified as being LGBTQ, and continuing to collaborate with DOC and our other contractors around providing really pre-planned, focused reentry plans for people. One of the limiting policies that we bump up against, not just as contractors, but the department as well, is that the reentry services for detainees are really limited. There's not a lot that we can offer and not a lot of information that anybody has about when that person's going to be able to leave. So for so many people, you can see on here that about more than a third of those people who responded to this survey are detained currently. And most of them have experienced domestic violence or might be going back to an environment that might not be safe, and we don't have as much information as we'd like to be able to help give them that kind of foundation for success afterwards. And
Ask a question?
yeah, absolutely.
When you mentioned the challenge of reentry planning for detainees, and some of that, of course, is, as you said, just not knowing when they'll be released. It's like that. Are there other barriers, any policy barriers that prevent your working with them, helping them, or
the Divas program serves everybody, both sentenced and detained. They can access all of our services in the same way. For the people who are looking for reentry support, a lot of times their caseworker doesn't know very much about what their release date is going to be. Caseworkers also just are very limited in what they can provide. Isaac, you might be able to help me with what the policy is, but the caseworkers aren't able to help them access other kinds of supported living, if that's a sober home or emergency housing or things like that, or rehab. And for a lot of people, they'll be detained and then sentenced to time served. So by the time their sentencing comes, they're being released, and we don't have as much time to be able to make sure that they have a really safe reentry plan. And caseworkers, I should say, do as much as they can to provide that information to us, but their knowledge is just as limited as ours a lot of times.
yeah. Thank you.
I'm happy to take any other questions. I think that was all of my overview of Divas.
I'll ask one more quick question. When you think about the new facility, do you have what sort of hopes and dreams do you have for Divas within that facility?
Yeah, I mean, just being able to expand the amount of time that we have there, or like the number of advocates that I can have working with people. I think, yeah, as of yesterday, there were about 130 people incarcerated. We're working with just about 75% of that population constantly. The way that we receive requests from people is through the in-facility mail system. And when I look at our list of people who are interested in being seen, it's, like I said, about 3/4 of the facility at any given time is interested in accessing a group, reentry support, or like one-on-one emotional support. I'd really like to be able to just be able to meet those needs as quickly as we can. And in terms of just the environment that I think we could build for incarcerated women, having, you know, open space, more light, living units that are more habitable than the ones that currently exist. There's been a lot of changes at CRCF to try and make spaces more welcoming. My office, you know, we try to make it look at least like a correctional facility as possible, but there are just structural limits to that building, and the programming that I think we could offer would just flourish so much with the ability to have more space, outdoor space, group space, all kinds of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so space and funding, and it's, I would just say it's important to note, and this may be true of all of all service providers, but you're working with a majority of the population. So as investments go, you know, this seems like it would benefit so many of the folks who are.
Yes, we hope so. Yeah.
I wonder if you have heard, do you have like raised beds to do gardening right now?
There is a gardening program. I think there are some raised beds in the yard currently. The gardening program is headed up by Ruthie Holmes, who's the living unit supervisor, because she has quite a green thumb. So she's in charge of that. So there is some space in the back. But that's a really highly sought after program to get into. I know a lot of people would be really interested in the gardening program.
And I've been there a couple of times. And I just wonder, it seems like there's a lot of colorful stuff going on there, but is there been any request for different colors of paint on the wall? And could people, excuse me, paint their walls, paint different walls or do projects with paint?
There's like just in terms of like creativity, creative time, each of our programs, I think, offers different kinds of like creative outlet groups. Jess and I co-facilitate an expressive arts healing group. In terms of the facility itself, there have been a lot of updates, a lot of painting, a lot of trying to make things lighter and brighter and away from just the traditional, very like muted colors. Each individual painting their cell, I haven't heard anything of it, but I'm sure that people would be interested if it was offered. Yeah.
I thought that actually looked pretty good compared to some other places that I've seen. I did see the main facility, the reentry facility, and the things that you say that people are asking for are incorporated into that facility. So
yeah,
it's very helpful.
And this is sort of a question for you, but also perhaps for others. I think just that transition to reentry, and I understand some service providers provide services to folks while they're in the facility as well as afterwards, and the network of organizations that might take on that that support in that transition. Can you just talk a little bit more about sort of what are the barriers? Are they financial? Are they policy? Are they just structural, and where people are located, and this, the challenge not being able to plan when you're not exactly sure when people are leaving and maybe where they're going. So, just trying to get at how we can sort of move the needle on improving services in that reentry.
Absolutely. I think something that we can all agree on is like the people's reentry planning starts that the day they enter the correctional facility. People are focused on when they're going to leave as soon as they get there. I have found that housing is like always the foundational block to anybody's success. If somebody is leaving without housing, there are just so many more barriers and challenges to that person being successful. And being able to access subsidized housing or any sort of the reentry housing, either pathways or sober living home, all of those things depend on sentence and spacing. And I think more access to those kinds of housing options would be really helpful. Folks leave from the correctional facility to stay with, family or friends or an acquaintance. And sometimes those plans are putting them back in the same environment that they were in before. And it would just be, I think, a huge leg up to be able to offer something different. Giving people options, I have found always helps people just think through the options quite a bit more. When people become really one-track minded on this is my only way to get out of jail, the other sorts of possibilities kind of fade away. So housing, I think, is the number one barrier. And then access to, employment, transportation in a lot of areas of Vermont becomes really hard. Even if they're in a supported environment, supported housing, but it's the only thing that they have in that area, and maybe they've just moved there, they don't have connections to their community, it can be really isolating really quickly.
Okay, so just to clarify, because I'm not sure if you misunderstood my question, or that is the answer to my question. You're saying that the barrier to accessing, in this case, those supportive inside correctional facility to during reentry is that they don't have clear housing or workplace. That is the missing piece to folks who are utilizing your services in that facility, to having good access to those services.
Sorry, yes, I didn't misunderstand. We're totally available to people after they leave. I think the people that I see who are most successful and aren't accessing us, who are accessing us more for like emotional support or like letting us know what their wins are and successes, are people that have those foundational things in place. People who leave without those kinds of plans are often accessing us in experiencing a lot of scarcity, on the edge of homelessness or in crisis, and are really not able to focus on a moving forward. They're just stuck in like a survival space. Yeah.
So you do transition that support service to a regional provider where they land outside the correctional facility. So those services are able to continue, but people aren't necessarily able to access them very well.
Yes, absolutely. They can connect with any of there's one domestic violence organization per county. And then I'm also available to folks a few days a week, more remotely just because of where I'm located. But for helping people transition into a new care provider, I'm there for that as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I wanted to send a message to the women in the facility is that a few years ago on one of the legislative visits, we were able to meet with a number of women, and they expressed the desire to have fresh milk. They had been having powdered milk. So the Department of Corrections and the Agency of Agriculture and our commission, our group here, our caucus, was involved in getting that fresh milk served.
I've heard a lot of really great
To them, and then to all the facilities in the whole state.
Yeah.
So it's Vermont milk. And so they made a difference in people's lives and their own lives. And it's good for agriculture in the state. And so please send our thanks to them for speaking out.
Absolutely. And I know that they send it back too. They really appreciated the
They
first.
do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wishing we had a day, maybe someday, we'll all just sit around for a day and talk about this, but we'll move on now to Marion Vermont Works for.
And I will be quick so you can hear from all providers because I think it'll be vital. Really quickly, Ella, just to answer your question as well. I'm Ronnie Basden. I'm the executive director at Vermont Works for Women. Funding is also a big challenge. Our contracts don't fund reentry services. So any of the services that any of our organizations can provide in release is all private funding. And it's a huge support, I think, to have the collaboration of stakeholders to be able to do that as well. Vermont Works for Women has been the workforce partner at the women's incarcerated facility for over 2 decades. We have worked with the women on building employment readiness skills, on workshops to build up their vocational and soft skills, one-on-one coaching to make sure they're having interview support, resume help, confidence building, and really working through goal setting at whatever level that looks like that women are coming to us. Over the past few years, we've also been very proud to work with the superintendent and CRCF staff to help develop an in-facility jobs program that's called Windows to Work. This program not only pays women a higher salary than it has historically, but it also mimics real work experiences. They apply for job promotions. They go through conflict resolution trainings when that pops up on the job. They get to apply to different facility positions and really get to utilize those skills in a real work environment, which is probably the greatest success for them upon reentry to be able to have those skills. I would say also because of a policy, Department of Corrections is not able to be an employment reference for incarcerated women upon release. So this allows our organization to be that employment reference. So they have something on their resume. Bless you. We've been very honored to be the workforce partner and work with women on developing what they need to really find success upon their release. I will be very candid that the services we provide today are being cut by close to 50% next year. Department of Corrections also has a policy where you cannot pay for contracted services that a state employee potentially provides. And they would like to move some of the job facility programs, enrichment nights with employers and other pieces to a workforce development coordinator that is in CRCF that started last fall. Our team has been working great alongside her to kind of develop these opportunities, but it is a big blow to services. It is a big blow to the women who we've built a strong, trusted relationship. We're going from 2 full-time staff members to 1 full-time staff member at the same time that the headcount is the highest it's been since pre-COVID. There's close to 133 women in the facility, and our team works with anywhere between 65 and 100 women per month. So this is a big impact on not only our organization, but really the progress that's been made within the facility in supporting women. Employment is one of the biggest indicators of success. Employment can help towards housing, can help towards getting out of bad situations. It can be a confidence builder for so many women. And employment doesn't look the same as anybody just applying a job upon release. It is definitely a path. Housing is a very big indicator of women even finding success in employment. There are still women that we have had great success in the job facilities program that unfortunately are being released to homelessness. And that does not bode well for finding employment, especially in the areas where they've really built their strengths and really built up their skills in those certain jobs. So when we look at some of the constraints moving forward, I really think policy and funding is one of our biggest constraints. We've been able to work really closely with in-facility staff and with corrections to build up these programs, but it very quickly can change, and it can very quickly dictate how we're able to run our programs and how well we're able to run our programs. So those are some, I will highlight some shining moments that I think we're excited about in work development with the facility. We're very close to working towards work release programs with Rhino Foods, where women who are currently incarcerated close to release can actually leave the facility during the day and go work within Rhino Foods to actually build up their skills, and then upon release have those employment opportunities. Our team is working really closely with them to provide that and support women in that journey. And so we're excited about what's to come there.
I think we should hear from our other two partners and then take questions, because we only have 10 minutes. Is that okay, Carol? I just don't want to.
Okay.
I'll stick around too in case I can answer questions. Thank you for the
Thank
time.
you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jess Kell. I'm from Lund, where I am the Kids Apart Parenting Program Coordinator. I'm based full-time inside the facility. The goal of Kids Apart is to reduce the trauma that a child experiences when a parent is incarcerated. And like our partners, we've been serving the incarcerated women in Vermont since the early 2000s. I've been with the program since 2007. One thing I just do want to note, you've heard the number that we have about approximately 131 women in facility, and I do want us to note that we crossed into the 130s this week, and that is the first time we've been at that number since March of 2020. So that is a significant number for incarcerated women in Vermont. We provide enhanced case management services to incarcerated mothers pregnant with children up until the age of 18, or when they graduate high school. We try to extend those services for as long as we can. So if the youth with an incarcerated mom turns 18 while they are still a senior, we will continue to provide services until they graduate from high school. The case management is highly individualized. A large number of women we're working with have involvement with the Department of Children and Families. So we're working, and again, the women that we are working with, the traumas that Kylan talked about earlier. So we're talking about families at the intersection of the criminal justice system, the Department of Children and Families, substance use disorder, generational poverty, generational trauma, and then you have the children that are impacted by all of that. We have women that enter the facility that have full custody of their children and are scrambling to make arrangements with family members to care for their children for an unknown period of time. We have women who enter who may have children that have been in state custody for some period of time. And so a significant amount of work is about their communication with the Department of Children and Families. Sometimes during the intake, a woman will disclose, well, I haven't spoken to my child, their caregiver, or DCF for over 6 months. So there's a lot of work around rebuilding avenues for communication and supporting that communication, and then providing groups and classes where communication is really a foundational piece. We have visits. Some of those visits are groups, and they take place on 2 Saturdays a month. Usually 8 to 10 women participate. We try to provide experiences during those visits that are the normal types of experiences that parents and children have together. Next month, we'll have our annual mother visit, which we always begin with a pancake breakfast. Because imagine what it's like to be a child who doesn't get to just sit with your parent and have breakfast in the morning. It's such a small thing, but that ability that we have to have a child sit down at a table and have their mom cut their pancakes. You know, and I highlight that, and it seems like such a, like on one level, it's such a small thing, but it really is so important. We also provide one-on-one visits because the group visits are not always what's in the best interest of that child. We could be talking about a child with special needs. We could talk about a mom whose level of anxiety makes visiting in a group almost impossible. So we really try, or we could be talking about a newborn, where we just want to provide a quieter, cozier space. We do try to provide multiple opportunities for weekly visitation for newborns. Fortunately, that's an extremely rare situation that we deal with. People often have questions about the pregnant women, and very fortunately, I mean, at this point, I think it's been probably close to 2 years since a woman has delivered a baby while incarcerated. So thankfully, that's not a regular occurrence. Kim LaRoche, who is the director of Parent-Child Center Services, is also with us today over video.
Hi guys, yeah. So like Jess was saying about the kid support that she offers inside the facility, I think it's important to emphasize kind of the supports that's offered to the caregivers and the children on the outside, working to support the entire family dynamic. That's what makes Kids Apart successful for the whole family unit. You know, when we talk about constraints fiscally, I think that is something that was brought up earlier. We have a great relationship with DOC and are grateful to be in the facility. The current contract does not fully fund the program. It focuses on funding the supports to the incarcerated mother in the inside, but not the whole wrap services. But we look forward to continued conversations and good work moving forward to hopefully make that program fiscally whole. But that's just as far as one of the constraints that has been thus far. But we have good conversations and look forward to future where Kids Apart is fully funded, because it is important, the inside work that Jess does, but then the community case management work that is done as well.
In terms of the space, we have one of the largest spaces in the facility. I don't like to complain about it. But the reality is, I came in the day after Christmas and the space was flooded with sewage. There's mold. There is no fresh air. It's a large space. We're allowed to put we're allowed to make it as bright and colorful as we want. But the reality is it is not a healthy or humane space to live or work in. In terms of policy, one policy that's had a significant impact in the last year, and we have had conversations with the Department of Corrections. We understand the reasoning, but there is an impact, which is the lack of ability to use facility equipment to attend family court. So there is a system that allows people to attend criminal hearings, but they're not allowed to access that for family court. And that is having a significant impact. They're also not allowed to attend. There's an odd little thing there with child support. So economic services, you attend a hearing. So the caseworkers cannot support, even though it's economic services, a caseworker can't support somebody in attending a child support hearing. When somebody's incarcerated, they have the ability to waive child support, but you can't do that if you don't appear. And if the courts are not aware that, so the courts do have the ability to call in on the lawyer line, but they are not aware that people don't have the ability. So that has had a significant impact on people this year. I'm able to facilitate family court hearings when I'm available. but I'm one person and I'm not available all the time for every individual. So there definitely have been gaps in access. And the phone that they're allowed to participate in family court on is on the living unit. It's the lawyer phone. So confidential juvenile proceedings are taking place in the living units with absolutely no ability for confidentiality.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jess.
When I read this morning, it was just over 5 minutes. I'm Joanne Nelson from Mercy Connections. I'm Director for Justice and Mentoring and Reentry there. Online is my close colleague, Kelly Moran from the Mercy Connections office of the CRCF, and our Executive Director is right back here, Lisa Falcone. We're in full force today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for your work for so many Vermonters. Our justice work, I'll talk a little bit about our justice work that we carry on through our state contract and a little more. Mercy Connections, for anyone who doesn't know, is located in the south end of Burlington, and we're a community-based multicultural education and social justice organization committed to supporting and advancing the lives of underserved and often marginalized Vermonters that we've been talking about today through education, mentoring, entrepreneurship, and community. So those main 4 pillars. We're coming up on 25 years old, and we've been in a relationship with the Department of Corrections, probably about 21 or so. And it was with the Vermont Works for Women that we started the mentoring program those years ago. Throughout our organization, we lead with the premise that all Vermonters, regardless of their circumstances, deserve dignity, respect, compassion, and the opportunity to pursue their promise. Last year, we served 860 individuals across the organization and served people from 51 countries of origin, speaking 23 different languages. 48 of our mentors in the Vermont Women's Mentoring Program provided 1,575 hours of service, and 194 incarcerated women participated in our justice and mentoring program throughout the year. We provide services that include the following. In the mentoring program, we match volunteer mentors with mentees, primarily at CRCF inside, and we ask both parties to spend a year with us. The idea is that it's restorative and that you're maybe matched inside the facility. You begin to meet with your mentor there. You're exposed to all these other amazing contractors and services there. You can begin to build trust and respect and relationship. And then that we hope that reentry planning happens, you get access to the success tools that you need. And when you are released, you take up with your mentor again in a little bit of a different relationship. You might be able to go to Mercy Connections and take advantage of everything there, but you could also meet August 1st for a cup of coffee, something like that. There's a little more freedom outside those doors for mentoring. Lots of our match pairs stay matched a minimum of 2 years. Let's see, what else should I tell you with timing in mind? We are essentially educators, and we work on educating for hope and belonging and building self-confidence and a sense of self-worth. In addition to mentoring inside and in the community after release, we offer what we call personal growth classes on Tuesday nights, which are led by Kelly and a facilitator who's also a master's education training person. And we actually have something called the Hope Index that we look at. So people, women who take the classes, fill it out before the class and after the class. So I'm working very closely with Kathy Estenborst about looking at those results this year to sort of make sure we can answer the question that this program is not just educative, but it's restorative, and the women themselves are telling us that. Inside the prison, I want to mention that Kelly is there pretty much every day, and she provides orientation and enrollment to the mentoring program. She oversees all of the match pair meetings inside, so she's always with that program happening. And those match pairs meet probably a minimum of once a month. So there's a lot going on there. We have 45 match pairs in the program right now. She attends as part of the contract at DOC reentry planning meetings and facility orientations. And we also host wildly popular pro-social events, both inside the prison and out, because it doesn't feel better about themselves with a good meal, right? So we do that. Mentors really seriously become a lifeline for people because they're a healthy new companion in a world that is, for the most part, struggling to get into and stay in recovery. And also, mentors don't judge you. They show up and they are who they are, and they have this idea that their job is to listen to you if you're their mentee. Our program is very restorative in a lot of ways that are research-based, and we offer a framework for trauma-affected women to spend time with their mentees, one-on-one, practicing pro-social skills, and coming to organized social events. Where there are gaps, well, in addition to all that work, we initially thought a big gap was that we couldn't match, or it was preferred that we match sentenced women only, and at any given time, about 50% for lots of reasons of the women held or detained. And so what I did is work with Kathy Astaborsky at DOC and negotiate so that it's preferred that we match sentenced people, so there's a little wiggle room there. But also we offer these education programs and everyone can attend those. I just want to mention that there are more ICE detained women there right now who are also attending those programs, so they get a little bit of our mission in that regard. I want to say that we've become a primary resource on reentry for helping to find safe housing for women who are homeless. This week I worked with someone in the last couple of days who's living in a tent on Pine Street. And it was 20 and 21 degrees, respectively, the 2 nights she was sitting outside. We provide individual assistance to filling out forms for benefits and services, and this is all on release, really. In addition, we welcome people to join our community meals that we have Thursday, and I extend an invitation to each of you to come and learn and about us and have lunch with us Thursday at noon. Just give me a call. I'll make sure I'm there to host you. And I want to say that the free classes we offer there, the programs there, and some online so that we can involve mentees anywhere. They're released in Vermont. All of those things are really not technically part of our DOC contracts, so we privately fund for those. And it's just in keeping with what my partners here said, is that we could definitely do some more funding for reentry services. Some of the challenges, I'm not going to repeat everything, although when you go last, everyone steals your thunder. But some of the challenges, constraints, really the lack of housing. Do I need to say more? In reentry planning, there's a lack of housing when those folks are considering how you reenter someone and how you find housing. Once they're out there, when they're homeless, it's really difficult on people to stay in recovery or even as they're in survival mode, try to connect up with a mentor. Lack of residential rehab programs in Vermont. Returning to places out of desperation, maybe that are not safe, encouraging old unhealthy habits. That's a huge constraint to mentoring and anything else that we're offering to these women. The changing profile overall, which has been hinted at a lot here for women reentering in the first place, it begs the question of what are we doing to support programs before along the pathway of women to prison, because it's mental health, trauma, and more mental health. And it's very challenging for anyone to even think straight on their pathways to prison if they're a woman. The vulnerability of the people, I've just seen it get worse since COVID, because in fact, we're talking about another huge system that doesn't work, and that's poverty. Most of our women live at or below that level of in the United States. And in Vermont, we had a woman who came in last week, and she just less than a year ago had a full-time job, an apartment, not a great apartment, but an apartment. And she was in recovery for almost a year. Had some things happen, had no backup plan, no nest egg, and now is living on Pine Street in the tent. So I want to tell you that everything else that partner said today, we support in a lot of ways. I think that I want to end on a good note, and that is there's a huge restorative wind blowing inside the CRCF for programs. Tons of ideas, tons of new things happening. There's almost a day that not a day goes by when we're asked to not jump into one of them. And that is becoming more and more of a challenge for us because there's literally two of us running the contract. We have the support of the center and everyone there, especially Lisa. But I want to say that that is going to need some more strategic thinking and support, because to ask the partners to do that and it's above and beyond the contract is, it really, as a director of the program, I'm looking at it and saying, how can we be sustainable with that? So thank you. Thank you very much. I brought some flyers for you too. Thank you. You're welcome.
Can I ask a question just
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
last point you just made?
Yes.
What I hear, and I may have like inferred my own something into that, but it's wonderful to be invited into the conversations. It's great that there's this like energy for change, but it's on top of everything that you're stretched thin already, and so
I think so. I think that it needs more communication, organization on the part of the Department of Corrections. They're trying their best and they're trying these amazing ideas. And of course, we're right there. So we've had hundreds of years of experience working with this particular population. So we're considered to be kind of in-house experts in a lot of ways. But when you're thinking about how to make ends meet and all the private funding that we're doing for everything else that we're doing that's not funded in the community, it begs the question, how do we meet the deliverables of the contract while also bringing our mission and our hearts and our compassion to saying yes to doing more without failing the women.
Right.
So yeah, it stretches our capacity.
understandable. Do you guys have other questions?
We need to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Great,
I don't
so
know.
great, so helpful to hear updates on what's happening right now, and just to make sure we're keeping this conversation at the forefront.
Yeah, and I just want to say that everything you hear really does help me think about just where we might need to go, and I'd want to hear so much more from all of you, but about in terms of preventing women from entering into this system or cycle, or just hearing the stats on the percentages of women who are in the facility and have experienced domestic violence or sexual violence. Like, what are the missed opportunities? Without, and it's not at all about assigning fault or blame, but just trying to ideate. Is that a word? Because it seems like there are some clear patterns and like a very clear like through line. And so, well, okay, that's great to know that. What are we doing to maybe alter paths for folks if possible? And when we think about the amount of resources we're pouring into, and resources, I mean money and time, pouring into a new facility. Imagine if, I know we need a facility, but imagine if we were like, just what check is there on balancing things out, and just maybe we don't need as big a facility if we can divert some of the resources to prevention and intervention.
Makes sense.
Or added, I think particularly, we don't want to only invest in the facility and not invest enough in the research, in the organizational support capacity and people, human resources. Like, we want to make sure that we're balancing that no matter what we end up doing around the facility.
Yes. And I'm not sure that we have, as a state in many ways, like, I don't think we have that balance right now, and it is what it is, but we just want to make sure that we're always talking about that. And so I really appreciate all of you for adding to that conversation and really being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. you.